She was a millionaire hotel heiress living a lie, and he was a single father who thought he'd found his soulmate. Until her family offered him money to disappear. Charlotte Vale fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder during a routine flight, never knowing that one moment of vulnerability would destroy everything she thought she knew about love and loyalty. Marcus Reed believed in honest work and protecting his 6-year-old daughter at any cost. But when he discovered the woman stealing his heart was worth more than he'd ever see in 10 lifetimes, he faced an impossible choice. Her uncle's briefcase full of cash came with a simple message. Take the money and walk away, or watch as photographers follow your little girl to school and reporters tear apart everything you've built. But some secrets have a way of exploding at the worst possible moment. And when Charlotte's world of privilege collides with Marcus's determination to shield his daughter, someone's heart is about to be shattered beyond repair. The question isn't whether love can conquer all, it's whether either of them will survive the choice between passion and protection. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story of forbidden love and impossible choices will leave you questioning everything you believe about family, sacrifice, and second chances. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Logan Airport as Charlotte Vale stood in the boarding line, her designer bag heavy on her shoulder. She pulled her wool coat tighter around herself and stifled a yawn. Last night's hotel board dinner had gone until nearly midnight, and her head still felt fuzzy from too much wine and not enough sleep. Now boarding flight 447 to Portland, Maine, the gate agent announced. Lottie, as her few real friends called her, shuffled forward with the other passengers. She just wanted to get home, take a hot bath, and forget about quarterly reports for a while. The small commuter plane looked tiny compared to the jets she usually flew in, but today she'd chosen the quick regional flight over her family's private plane. Sometimes she craved being just another passenger. She found her seat, 12A, window side, and settled in with a grateful sigh. The plane was only half full, mostly business travelers and a few families. Across the aisle, a man in work clothes was already buckled in, reading a children's book with a lighthouse on the cover. Lottie glanced at him as she stored her bag overhead. He had kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of real work. His dark skin had a warm undertone, and when he looked up and caught her staring, he offered a friendly nod. "Good morning," he said simply. "Morning," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm slightly. The man beside her, Marcus, according to his boarding pass that had fallen to the floor, closed the book and tucked it into a lunch pail by his feet. The cover showed a little girl standing by the ocean, and Lottie found herself curious about who he was reading it for. "Picking someone up in Portland?" she asked as the plane began to taxi. "My daughter," Marcus said with a smile that lit up his whole face. "She's 6. Has this thing about lighthouses right now?" Something in Lottie's chest softened. "That's sweet. Maya's staying with my sister while I'm working in Boston. Can't wait to see her." He paused, then added, "You heading home too?" "Something like that." Lottie settled back in her seat as the plane lifted off. She didn't mention that home was a penthouse apartment worth more than most people made in a lifetime. "I work in hospitality consulting." It wasn't entirely a lie. She did consult with the board of Vale Hotels, the company her family had built over 3 generations. But somehow, sitting next to this man with paint under his fingernails and genuine warmth in his eyes, the full truth felt too heavy. 20 minutes into the flight, the plane hit a patch of rough air. Nothing dangerous, just enough to make the cabin shake and passengers grip their armrests. Lottie, who'd been fighting exhaustion since takeoff, felt her eyelids getting heavy. "Just a little turbulence," Marcus said quietly. "These small planes bounce around more, but the pilots know what they're doing." His voice was steady and calming. Before Lottie knew it, Her eyes had drifted shut. The last thing she remembered was her head starting to tip sideways. She woke an hour later to find herself leaning against something warm and solid. Blinking in confusion, she realized her head was resting on Marcus's shoulder. His jacket smelled like sawdust and something clean, maybe cedar. "Oh my God," she whispered, sitting up quickly. "I'm so sorry." "No worries," Marcus said with an easy smile. "You looked like you needed the rest." Lottie noticed he'd moved to the middle seat, giving her the window. "You didn't have to." "Lady in front of me moved up when she saw you were tired. Figured you'd be more comfortable with the wall to lean on." He shrugged like it was nothing, but the kindness in the gesture made Lottie's throat tight. When was the last time someone had taken care of her without wanting something in return? "Thank you," she said softly. "I haven't felt safe in years." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Marcus gave her a long look, not prying, just understanding. "Sometimes we all need a safe place to rest," he said. The plane began its descent into Portland, and passengers started gathering their things. Lottie and Marcus stood together in the aisle, waiting for the line to move. "I know this sounds crazy," Marcus said, "but would you want to grab coffee in the terminal? I've got about 20 minutes before my ride gets here." Lottie checked her phone. Her driver wouldn't arrive for at least 15 minutes. "I'd like that." They made their way through the small terminal to a cafe near the baggage claim. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the salt air that seemed to seep through every corner of coastal Maine. Marcus ordered black coffee and a blueberry muffin. Lottie got a latte and found herself studying his hands as he counted out exact change from his wallet. "So, what kind of hospitality consulting?" he asked as they found a small table by the window. "Hotels, mostly, making sure guests have good experiences." Again, not technically a lie. "What about you, besides reading lighthouse books to 6-year-olds?" "I'm an electrician, residential stuff, some commercial. Was up in Boston working on a hotel renovation, actually." Marcus broke off a piece of muffin and offered it to her. "Old building, lots of tricky wiring." Lottie wondered if he'd been working on one of her family's properties, but decided not to ask. This felt too nice to complicate with business talk. "Must be satisfying work," she said. "Fixing things, making them better." "Yeah, it is." Marcus looked surprised that she understood. "Most people think it's just about flipping switches, but there's real skill involved. Problem solving, making sure families are safe and comfortable." The way he talked about his work, with pride but no arrogance, made Lottie's chest flutter. She was so used to men who bragged about their accomplishments or tried to impress her with their connections. Marcus just spoke about his life like it mattered, which it clearly did. "Attention passengers," came an announcement over the terminal speakers. "This is a reminder that the hourly shuttle to long-term parking will be departing in 5 minutes." Marcus checked his phone. "That's my ride. Maya gets out of school in an hour, and I promised to pick her up myself today." They walked toward the exit together, past a small gift shop and a woman with silver hair who was fumbling with her phone camera. "Excuse me, dears," the older woman said. "Would you mind if I took a quick photo? You two looked so peaceful on the plane. It reminded me that people still take care of each other." Lottie started to object, but Marcus just smiled. "Sure thing, Mrs. Keegan. I volunteer with the Neighborhood Welcoming Committee. We like to share nice moments sometimes." She held up her phone. "Just for our community page." "Oh, we're not," Lottie began. "Together?" Mrs. Keegan looked confused. "But on the plane, when you were sleeping on his shoulder, it was so sweet. He moved seats to make sure you were comfortable, and he kept checking to make sure the overhead vent wasn't blowing on you." Lottie glanced at Marcus, who looked slightly embarrassed. "You did that?" "Like I said, you looked tired." Mrs. Keegan had already snapped the photo. There, perfect. I'll post it with something nice about kindness at 30,000 feet. She beamed at them both. You make a lovely couple. Before either of them could correct her, she bustled away toward the baggage claim. We should probably, Lottie started. Yeah, we should clarify, Marcus said at the same time. They both stopped and laughed. Although, Marcus said carefully, it wasn't entirely unpleasant, the shoulder thing. No, Lottie agreed, feeling brave. It wasn't. Outside the terminal, Marcus pointed toward the shuttle stop. That's me. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. Look, I know this might be forward, but would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? There's a great little place on the harbor that does amazing clam chowder. Lottie's heart did a small flip. When was the last time someone had asked her out without knowing her last name? I'd love that. They exchanged numbers quickly as the shuttle pulled up. I'll text you about that harbor place, Marcus said, climbing onto the shuttle. And Lottie? Yeah? Thanks for letting me make sure you got some rest. As the shuttle pulled away, Lottie stood in the pickup lane with a smile she couldn't wipe off her face. Her phone buzzed, a text from her driver saying he was running 10 minutes late. For once, she didn't mind waiting. Another buzz made her look at her phone again. This time, it was a notification from a local community page she'd never heard of. Curious, she clicked on it. The photo Mrs. Keegan had taken showed her asleep against Marcus's shoulder. Her face looked peaceful, unguarded, in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Marcus's expression was gentle and protective, one hand steadying her shoulder while he looked out the window. The caption read, Kindness at 30,000 feet. Sometimes strangers become angels. This sweet man made sure a tired fellow passenger got some rest on our morning flight. Faith in humanity restored. The comments were already piling up. This made my whole day. We need more people like this in the world. True gentlemen. Lottie screenshotted the post, then texted Marcus. Coffee's on me next time. L. His response came back 15 minutes later. Harbor walk after my shift? Around 5? Perfect. See you then. As her driver finally pulled up, a discreet black sedan that screamed wealth, Lottie slid into the back seat feeling lighter than she had in months. She didn't notice the car following at a distance or the way her driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. At the same time, across town, Marcus was picking up Maya from Lincoln Elementary. His sister Tasha had texted him a link to the community post with a string of laughing emojis and the message, Is that your shoulder, big bro? Dad! Maya launched herself into his arms as he walked up to the school pickup line. She was small for 6, with his dark eyes and her mother's delicate features. Her backpack was covered in star stickers, and she had paint under her fingernails. Clearly art class had been today. Hey, baby girl, how was school? Mrs. Rodriguez let us paint the ocean. Mine has 3 lighthouses and a whale. Maya bounced as they walked toward his pickup truck. Can we read the lighthouse book tonight? Absolutely. Marcus buckled her into her booster seat and handed her the book from his lunch pail. Actually, I met someone today who might like that book too. A lady? A lady. Marcus started the truck and pulled into traffic. She seemed very nice. Does she like lighthouses? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Maya studied the book's cover thoughtfully. If she likes lighthouses, she can be our friend. Maybe she can, sweetheart. Maybe she can. As they drove through downtown Portland toward their small house near the eastern waterfront, Marcus found himself thinking about Lottie's face when she'd woken up on his shoulder. Soft and vulnerable, like someone who didn't get to let her guard down very often. He'd dated a little over the past 2 years, nothing serious, nothing that interfered with Maya or work. But something about Lottie felt different. The way she'd thanked him, like simple kindness was rare in her world. The careful way she talked about her job, like she was used to people wanting things from her. Maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe she was just tired from traveling. But when she'd said she hadn't felt safe in years, something in her voice had made his chest tight with the urge to protect her. At 5 o'clock sharp, Marcus stood on the eastern promenade overlooking Casco Bay. The harbor stretched out before them, dotted with lobster boats heading out for the evening haul. The air smelled like salt and seaweed, and gulls wheeled overhead in the golden light. Lottie appeared at the top of the walking trail wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she'd traded her designer bag for a simple crossbody purse. She looked younger, more relaxed. "This is beautiful," she said, joining him at the railing. "Best view in the city. Maya and I come here most weekends." Marcus pointed toward a small lighthouse in the distance. "That's Spring Point Light, built in 1897. You really know your lighthouses." "I know my daughter's obsessions." Marcus grinned. "Last month it was dinosaurs. Before that, space. But lighthouses have been holding steady for 3 months now, so I think we're in it for the long haul." They started walking along the paved trail that curved around the harbor. Lottie asked thoughtful questions about his work, about Maya, about Portland. She listened like she actually cared about the answers, which surprised him. Most people just waited for their turn to talk. "What about you?" he asked as they paused near a small beach where a few brave souls were flying kites in the stiff breeze. "Any family in the area?" "My mother lives here. Uncle too. It's complicated." Lottie wrapped her arms around herself as the wind picked up. "Sometimes I think they forget I'm a person, not just a position to fill." Marcus didn't understand exactly what she meant, but he heard the loneliness in her voice. Without thinking, he took off his knit beanie and settled it over her hair. "Better?" "Much." Lottie's cheeks were pink from the cold, and when she smiled, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "Thank you." They found a food cart near the harbor selling clam chowder and sat on a bench facing the water. The chowder was thick and creamy, full of tender clams and chunks of potato. Lottie made appreciative sounds as she ate, completely unself-conscious. "This is incredible," she said. "I usually eat at restaurants where they bring you tiny portions on huge plates." "Business dinners?" "Something like that." Lottie's expression grew guarded for a moment, then relaxed. "This is much better. Real food for real people." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Marcus found himself studying Lottie's profile. She was beautiful, but more than that, she seemed genuinely interested in his life. Not many women wanted to hear about 6-year-old bedtime routines or the intricacies of rewiring old houses. "So," he said carefully, "there's something happening at Mr. Hennessy's bookstore tomorrow night. A children's author is coming to read. Maya's been talking about it all week." Lottie turned to face him. "That sounds lovely. Would you like to come? I mean, if you're not busy, Maya would probably like to meet you." The offer hung in the air between them. Marcus held his breath, suddenly nervous. Introducing someone to Maya was a big step. He'd only done it once before, and that hadn't ended well. But Lottie's face lit up with what looked like genuine delight. "I'd love to meet Maya, and I have to admit, it's been a long time since I heard a good children's story." "Great!" Marcus felt relief, and something warmer flooded through him. "Mr. Hennessy's on Exchange Street, 7 o'clock. They walked back toward the parking area as the streetlights began to flicker on. The harbor was settling into evening quiet, with just the sound of water against the docks and the distant call of seabirds. "I should probably get going," Lottie said when they reached the lot. "Early morning tomorrow." "Yeah, me too. Maya's bedtime routine is sacred. Bath, story, songs, and then 17 glasses of water and 4 trips to the bathroom. Lottie laughed, a real, unguarded sound. 17? Give or take, kid's got a bladder the size of a pea. As a sleek black car pulled up to the curb, Marcus realized he'd been hoping Lottie drove something normal. Maybe a Honda or a practical SUV. The town car that arrived was clearly a hired driver, and the man who got out wore a crisp uniform. "Ms. Vale?" the driver said. "I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic from the meeting ran longer than expected." Marcus caught the last name, but didn't think much of it. Vale was common enough, but something about the car, the driver, the formal way the man spoke made him wonder who exactly Lottie was. "Thank you, James," Lottie said. She turned back to Marcus with what looked like mild embarrassment. "Work perk. They worry about me driving after long days." Seemed like a reasonable explanation, even if the car probably cost more than Marcus made in a year. "See you tomorrow?" she asked. "Definitely." As the car pulled away, Marcus stood in the parking lot for a long moment, replaying the afternoon in his head. Lottie was clearly more well off than he'd assumed, but she'd also seemed genuinely interested in his life. She'd asked good questions about Maya, hadn't flinched when he mentioned bedtime routines and school pickups. Maybe this could work. Maybe the differences between their worlds weren't as big as they seemed. His phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "How'd the harbor walk go?" "Good, really good. Bring her by the shop sometime. I want to meet the lady who inspired your first smile in 6 months." Marcus grinned as he typed back. "Tomorrow night, bookstore." "Can't wait." As Marcus drove home through the familiar streets of his neighborhood, modest houses with well-kept yards, corner stores that knew everyone's name, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow evening in a way he hadn't looked forward to anything in a long time. At her penthouse apartment overlooking the harbor, Lottie stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and tried to spot the lighthouse Marcus had shown her. The view from up here was spectacular, but somehow it felt less real than standing on the promenade with salt air in her face and Marcus's hat keeping her warm. She'd already gotten 3 texts about tomorrow's board meeting, 2 calls about charity events, and a message from her mother asking about lunch next week. Her real life was pressing back in around the edges, but for a few hours this afternoon, she'd just been Lottie. Not Charlotte Vale, hotel heiress. Not the reluctant face of a hospitality empire. Just a woman having clam chowder with a man who read lighthouse books to his daughter. The children's author event would be interesting. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been to anything so normal, so unconnected to business or social obligations. The thought of meeting Maya both excited and terrified her. What did you say to a 6-year-old who loved lighthouses? What if the little girl could tell that Lottie had no idea how to talk to children? But Marcus's face when he'd talked about Maya had been so full of love and pride that Lottie found herself wanting to understand what mattered to them both. When was the last time someone had invited her somewhere just because they wanted her there? Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Thanks for today. Looking forward to tomorrow." Lottie smiled as she typed back, "Me too." For the first time in longer than she could remember, that was completely true. The next evening, Lottie stood outside Mr. Hennessy's bookstore on Exchange Street, checking her reflection in the window. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft green sweater. Casual, but not trying too hard. Her stomach fluttered with nerves she hadn't felt since high school. Through the glass, she could see families gathering in the children's section. Parents sat cross-legged on colorful rugs, while kids bounced excitedly around stacks of picture books. The warm light and cheerful chatter looked like something from a movie about normal people's lives. "Hey there." Lottie turned to find Marcus walking up the sidewalk, holding hands with the most beautiful little girl she'd ever seen. Maya had Marcus's dark eyes and smooth brown skin, but her hair was pulled into neat braids with bright yellow beads that clicked softly when she moved her head. She wore a purple jacket covered in glow-in-the-dark stars. "Maya, this is Lottie," Marcus said gently. "Lottie, meet my daughter." Maya studied Lottie with the serious intensity only 6-year-olds could manage. "Dad says you might like lighthouses." "I'm still learning about them," Lottie admitted, crouching down to Maya's eye level. "But I'd love to hear what you know." "They keep ships safe in storms," Maya said solemnly. "And they stand up really tall, even when the waves are big." Something about the way Maya said it, like lighthouses were the most important things in the world, made Lottie's chest warm. "That sounds very brave." "Yeah. Do you want to help me pick a story for tonight?" Lottie glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd love to." Inside the bookstore, Mr. Hennessy greeted them with genuine warmth. He was older, maybe 65, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan that looked hand-knitted. "Marcus, good to see you, and this must be Maya's new friend." "I'm Charlotte," Lottie said, shaking his hand. She noticed Marcus glance at her when she used her full name instead of Lottie, but he didn't comment. The children's section was cozy chaos. Kids ranging from toddlers to maybe 10 years old sat in a circle around a woman with curly red hair and a guitar case. Parents lined the walls, some holding babies, others helping older kids settle down. Maya grabbed Lottie's hand and pulled her toward a low bookshelf. "We get to pick one story for Ms. Sarah to read after she does her songs." The shelf was full of picture books with bright covers. Maya pointed to various options, explaining the plots with 6-year-old enthusiasm. "This one's about a cat who thinks he's a pirate, and this one has a dragon who's scared of mice." "Oh, and this one?" Maya pulled out a book with a lighthouse on the cover. A little girl stood at the bottom, looking up at the beacon cutting through storm clouds. "What's this one about?" Lottie asked. "It's about a girl who talks to the lighthouse keeper's ghost," Maya said matter-of-factly. "She helps him remember why the light is important." Lottie felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Something about the image, a small figure finding strength in something tall and steady, resonated deep in her chest. "This one," she said softly. "Let's choose this one." Maya beamed and ran to add the book to a pile near Ms. Sarah's chair. "Good choice," Marcus said, appearing beside Lottie with 2 cups of coffee from a small table in the back. "Maya's had that book memorized for months, but she never gets tired of hearing it." "It's beautiful." Lottie accepted the coffee gratefully. The idea of finding guidance in the storm. "Yeah." Marcus's voice was quiet. "Sometimes we all need something steady to aim for." The way he said it made Lottie wonder what storms he'd weathered. She was about to ask when a woman's voice interrupted. "So this is the famous shoulder lady." They turned to see a woman about Marcus's age, approaching with a knowing smile. She had the same warm eyes as Marcus, but her expression was more guarded. Her scrub suggested she'd come straight from work, probably a nurse or medical technician. "Lottie, this is my sister Tasha," Marcus said. "Tasha, meet Lottie." "Charlotte," Lottie corrected again, extending her hand. Tasha's handshake was firm, assessing. "So what do you do, Charlotte?" "I work in hospitality, consulting mostly." The half-truth felt heavier each time she said it. "Hospitality," Tasha repeated thoughtfully. "Like hotels?" "Among other things." Lottie was saved from elaborating by Ms. Sarah strumming her guitar. "All right, friends, who's ready for some stories?" The next hour passed like a dream. Ms. Sarah sang songs about friendly monsters and dancing vegetables while the kids giggled and clapped along. Maya leaned against Lottie's side during one particularly silly song about a monkey who couldn't find his socks. And Lottie felt something she'd never experienced before: the simple trust of a child. When it came time for story reading, Maya bounced up to present their lighthouse book. Ms. Sarah read with different voices for each character, making the lighthouse keeper sound wise and weathered, the little girl brave and curious. The story was about a girl named Emma who could see the ghost of an old lighthouse keeper during storms. He'd forgotten why he needed to keep the light burning, and ships were getting lost. Emma reminded him that every light mattered, that people were counting on him to guide them safely home. "The light isn't just for the ships that are lost," Emma told the ghost in the story. "It's for the ones who just need to know where they belong." Lottie found herself blinking back unexpected tears. When was the last time she'd felt like she belonged anywhere? After the story, as parents gathered their children and said goodbyes, Mrs. Keegan appeared with a manila envelope. "Oh, perfect. I was hoping to find you two here." She beamed at Marcus and Lottie. "I had that lovely photo from yesterday printed. Thought you might like copies." She handed them each a 5x7 print of the airplane photo. In the soft lighting of the bookstore, surrounded by the warmth of family life, the image looked even more tender than it had on social media. "People still take care of each other," Mrs. Keegan said to Maya, showing her the photo. "Your daddy made sure this nice lady got some rest on the airplane." Maya studied the picture seriously, then looked up at Lottie. "You look peaceful." "I was," Lottie said honestly. "Your dad has a very comfortable shoulder." Maya giggled, and even Tasha cracked a smile. Outside the bookstore, as families dispersed into the evening, Tasha pulled Marcus aside for a whispered conversation. Lottie couldn't hear the words, but she caught the protective tone. After a moment, Tasha approached her. "It was nice meeting you, Charlotte. Maya clearly likes you, which is saying something. She's pretty picky about new people." "She's wonderful. You both should be proud." "We are." Tasha's expression softened slightly. "Marcus hasn't brought anyone around Maya in a long time. Just be careful with them, okay? They've both been hurt enough." The warning was delivered kindly but firmly. Lottie nodded, understanding. "I care about them already. More than I expected to." "Good." Tasha squeezed Lottie's arm. "Then we'll get along just fine." As Tasha said goodbye and headed to her car, Marcus and Maya approached. "Someone's way past bedtime," Marcus said, hoisting a sleepy Maya onto his shoulders. "Can Charlotte come to our house?" Maya asked drowsily. "We have ice cream." Lottie's heart squeezed. "That sounds amazing, but it's a school night. Maybe another time?" "Promise?" "I promise." They walked toward the parking area together. Maya dozed against Marcus's neck while he carried her easily, one hand steadying her legs, the other holding Lottie's as they navigated the uneven sidewalk. "Thank you for tonight," Marcus said softly. "Maya doesn't warm up to people easily. Her mom—" He trailed off, then seemed to decide against sharing that story. "Let's just say Maya's learned to be cautious. She's incredible. You're doing an amazing job with her. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, but she makes everything worth it." They'd reached Marcus's truck, an older pickup that was clearly well-maintained, but showed its age. Maya barely stirred as he buckled her into her car seat, then covered her with a small blanket that had lighthouses printed on it. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked quietly. "There's a little place near the harbor that makes great fish and chips. Maya loves their mac and cheese." "Yes," Lottie said without hesitation. "I'd love that." Marcus smiled and kissed her cheek, brief and soft, but it sent warmth spreading through her whole body. 7 o'clock? I'll text you the address." As she watched them drive away, Maya's small hand waving sleepily from the car seat, Lottie felt something shift in her chest. For 28 years, she'd moved through life feeling like an observer, watching other people live while she performed her role as Charlotte Vale, hotel heiress. But tonight, reading stories and sharing coffee with Marcus and Maya, she'd felt like a participant in something real. The next evening, Lottie found herself in the Vale family townhouse for dinner with her mother and uncle. The dining room was elegant. Mahogany table, crystal glasses, oil paintings of long-dead relatives watching from the walls. It felt like a museum compared to the cozy chaos of the bookstore. "You seem distracted tonight," her mother Evelyn observed, cutting her salmon into precise bites. At 55, Evelyn Vale was still striking, with silver-streaked blonde hair and the kind of posture that came from decades of charity galas and board meetings. "Just tired," Lottie said, pushing asparagus around her plate. Her Uncle Graham set down his wineglass and studied her with sharp businessman eyes. "How was your day? Anything interesting?" Graham was her father's younger brother, and since her father's death 5 years ago, he'd taken over much of the day-to-day operations of Vale Hotels. He was smart and usually kind, but he had strong opinions about image and propriety. "I went to a children's book reading last night," Lottie said carefully. "It was nice." "A book reading?" Evelyn looked puzzled. "Was it a charity event?" "No, just a regular bookstore thing. I met a friend's daughter." "What kind of friend?" Graham asked, with the casual tone that meant he was fishing for information. Lottie felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Just someone I met. He's an electrician. Has a 6-year-old who loves lighthouse stories." Graham and Evelyn exchanged a look across the table. "An electrician," Graham repeated thoughtfully. "Local?" "Yes, and before you ask, he's a good man, kind and hard-working and devoted to his daughter." Lottie's voice came out sharper than she'd intended. "I'm sure he is," Graham said mildly. "I just worry about, well, you know how people can be. Your public profile means what? That I can't have normal friendships?" "Of course you can," Evelyn interjected smoothly. "Graham just wants to make sure you're being careful. There are people who might try to use a connection to our family for their own purposes." The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Lottie set down her fork harder than necessary. "Not everyone is after something, Mother. Some people are just decent human beings." "Of course, dear. We just want you to be happy and safe." Lottie excused herself early, claiming a headache that was becoming more real by the minute. As she waited for her driver in the foyer, she caught fragments of Graham and Evelyn's continued conversation from the dining room. "Need to be careful about optics. Public perception matters. Maybe have someone look into—" Lottie's stomach turned. They were going to investigate Marcus. She pulled out her phone to text him, then stopped. What would she say? "Hey, my family might be doing a background check on you because they think you're after my money?" She'd gotten so caught up in feeling normal that she'd almost forgotten who she really was. An hour later, Lottie sat in the small diner near the harbor where she was supposed to meet Marcus and Maya for dinner. She'd changed into jeans and a simple sweater, but she still felt like she was wearing a costume marked "regular person." Marcus and Maya arrived right on time, Maya skipping between her father's legs while he held the door open. "Charlotte!" Maya launched herself at Lottie's legs for a hug. "Dad says they have the best mac and cheese in Maine." "That's a pretty big claim," Lottie said, lifting Maya into the booth beside her. "We'll have to test it." The diner was exactly what Lottie had hoped for. Mismatched chairs, coffee cups that had seen better days, and a menu laminated with the kind of tape that meant it had been cleaned 1,000 times. The waitress called everyone Han and poured coffee without being asked. Maya kept up a steady stream of chatter about school, her art project about ocean animals, and her friend Sophie, who was missing her front teeth. Marcus listened with the patient attention of a parent who genuinely enjoyed his child's company. And then Mrs. Rodriguez said my octopus was the most creative she'd ever seen because I gave it a lighthouse on its head. Maya finished triumphantly. An octopus lighthouse keeper, Lottie mused. That's brilliant. He could use all 8 arms to keep different lights working. Maya's eyes went wide. Yes, and he could live underwater and help the fish too. As Maya launched into an elaborate story about her underwater lighthouse octopus, Lottie found herself relaxing for the first time all day. This felt real in a way her family dinner hadn't. No one here cared about quarterly reports or public image. They just cared about whether Maya's mac and cheese was too hot and if the ketchup bottle was within reach. So, what did you think of Mr. Hennessy's last night? Marcus asked during a brief pause in Maya's octopus saga. I loved it. Everyone was so... Lottie searched for the right word. Genuine, like they actually wanted to be there, not because they had to be. That's the best kind of gathering, Marcus agreed. Maya and I try to stick to those. Dad doesn't like fancy parties, Maya informed Lottie matter-of-factly. He says they make people forget how to be normal. Lottie nearly choked on her water. What do you mean? Like when people wear clothes that hurt and talk about boring stuff instead of playing games. Maya explained. Dad says life's too short to pretend you're someone else. The words hit Lottie like a physical blow. She'd been pretending to be someone else her entire life. The irony was almost funny. She was sitting here pretending to be normal, while Marcus's 6-year-old daughter accidentally called out everything that was wrong with her world. Your dad sounds very wise, Lottie managed. He is. He knows how to fix everything. Maya leaned against Lottie's shoulder. Will you come to my school's art show next week? I'm entering my octopus lighthouse. Lottie's chest tightened with unexpected emotion. I wouldn't miss it. After dinner, they walked along the harbor as the sun began to set. Maya ran ahead, chasing seagulls and collecting smooth stones from the beach. Marcus and Lottie followed slowly, their hands linked. She really likes you, Marcus said quietly. It usually takes her months to warm up to new people. She's amazing, so smart and creative and... Lottie watched Maya attempt to skip stones, her technique enthusiastic if not effective. You're raising someone special. I'm trying. Some days I worry I'm not enough. Single dad, blue-collar job, tiny house. But Maya seems happy. Marcus. Lottie stopped walking and turned to face him. You're giving her everything that matters. Love, attention, security, values. That's not tiny. That's huge. Something in Marcus's expression shifted. You really mean that? I do? And she did, which made what she had to tell him even harder. They found Maya building a sand castle near the water's edge, complete with a stick lighthouse in the center courtyard. It's got a moat for protection, Maya announced, and a lighthouse to keep the sand crabs safe. Perfect design, Lottie said, crouching down to admire the architecture. As they helped Maya add shell decorations to her castle, Lottie felt her phone buzz with several texts. She ignored them until Maya got distracted by a particularly interesting piece of seaweed. The messages were from her assistant, her mother, and 2 board members, but it was the news alert that made her blood freeze. Vail Hotels to explore boutique expansion. Charlotte Vail spotted scouting locations in Portland Harbor District. Lottie's hands started shaking. There was even a photo, grainy but clearly her, walking near the harbor. It must have been taken yesterday during her walk with Marcus. She glanced up to find Marcus watching her with concern. Everything okay? Lottie started, then realized Maya was listening. Yes, just work stuff. But she could see Marcus wasn't convinced. His expression had shifted from concern to something more careful. more guarded. They walked back toward the parking area in relative quiet, Maya skipping between them and chattering about her sand castle plans for next time. But Lottie could feel Marcus's attention on her, sense his growing awareness that something wasn't quite right. At his truck, as he buckled Maya into her car seat, Lottie's phone rang. The caller ID showed Graham's name, and she knew she couldn't ignore it twice. "I should take this," she said apologetically. "Charlotte, where are you?" Graham's voice was sharp with concern. "I'm out for dinner. There's a photo of you in the Harbor District on 3 different news blogs. People are speculating about expansion plans, saying you were meeting with local business owners. The phone's been ringing all evening." Lottie closed her eyes. "Graham, I wasn't meeting with anyone about business. I was just what? Charlotte, you can't be seen canvassing. Areas we haven't publicly announced we're considering. It affects stock prices, development costs, local politics. I wasn't canvassing anything." Lottie's voice came out louder than she'd intended. When she opened her eyes, Marcus was standing by his truck's driver door, clearly having heard at least part of the conversation. His expression had gone completely neutral, the look of someone trying to process unexpected information. Maya was already half asleep in her car seat, but Marcus was wide awake and studying Lottie like he was seeing her for the first time. "I have to go," she told Graham, ending the call. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of waves against the harbor and Maya's sleepy murmur about needing her lighthouse book for bedtime. "Vale Hotels," Marcus said finally. It wasn't a question. Lottie's throat felt tight. "Yes." "Charlotte Vale." Marcus ran a hand over his face. "Jesus, you're Charlotte Vale." The way he said her name, like it tasted bitter, made Lottie's stomach drop. "I was going to tell you—" "When? After I introduced you to my daughter? After she got attached?" Marcus's voice was quiet, but she could hear the hurt underneath. "I told you about my work, my life, Maya's bedtime routine. What did you tell me? That you work in hospitality consulting?" "It wasn't technically a lie." "It was a lie, Charlotte. A lie of omission." Marcus opened his truck door, then paused. "I need some time to think about this." "Marcus, please." "I'll text you," he said, not meeting her eyes. "But right now, I need to get Maya home and figure out what the hell I've gotten us into." He drove away without looking back, leaving Lottie standing alone in the harbor parking lot as the evening breeze cut through her sweater and reality crashed back down around her. That night, she sat in her penthouse apartment, staring at the lighthouse Marcus had pointed out to her 2 days ago. The beacon swept across the dark water in steady, predictable intervals, a reliable guide for ships trying to find their way home. But Lottie had never felt more lost. Her phone buzzed at nearly midnight, a text from Marcus. "Need to take a little space, need to think. I'll call you in a couple days." She typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on. "I understand. I'm sorry." But as she lay awake watching the lighthouse beam sweep across her bedroom ceiling, Lottie wondered if sorry would be enough to fix what she'd broken. 3 days passed before Marcus's text arrived. 3 days of Lottie checking her phone every few minutes, jumping at every notification, and failing to concentrate on anything else. She'd canceled 2 business dinners and a charity board meeting, claiming illness that wasn't entirely untrue. Her stomach had been twisted in knots since their harbor dinner. "Coffee at Harbor Nook tomorrow at 5? Talk." The message was short and formal, nothing like the warm texts they'd been exchanging. But it was contact, which was more than Lottie had dared hope for. She arrived at the small cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where they could speak privately. Harbor Nook was the kind of place where fishermen grabbed coffee before dawn and mothers brought toddlers for afternoon treats. The mismatched furniture and handwritten menu felt worlds away from the corporate boardrooms, where Lottie usually conducted difficult conversations. Marcus arrived exactly on time, wearing work clothes that suggested he'd come straight from a job site. His expression was careful, guarded in a way that made Lottie's chest ache. "Hi," she said softly as he sat across from her. "Hi." Marcus ordered black coffee from the teenage server, then turned his attention to Lottie. "I've been thinking." "So have I." Lottie's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her mug. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I should have told you who I was from the beginning." "Yeah, you should have." His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "But I've been trying to understand why you didn't." Lottie blinked in surprise. She'd expected accusations, demands for explanations. She hadn't expected him to try to see things from her perspective. She struggled to find the right words. "When you talked about Maya, about your work, about the things that matter to you, you looked at me like I was just a person, not a company, or a bank account, or a networking opportunity. I haven't felt like just a person in a very long time." Marcus studied her face for a long moment. "That's why you said you work in consulting." "I do work in consulting. I consult with our board about guest services, property management, community relations." Lottie met his eyes. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. "What is the whole truth?" Lottie took a deep breath. "My great-grandfather started Vale Hotels in 1952. My father expanded it into what it is now, 47 properties across New England. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited his shares and his seat on the board. My Uncle Graham runs the day-to-day operations, but major decisions require my approval." "So you're rich?" "Yes, very rich." The words tasted strange. "But Marcus, I need you to understand something. I didn't lie about the things that matter. I meant everything I said about feeling safe with you, about caring about Maya, about wanting to be part of your lives." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, staring into his coffee cup. When he finally looked up, his expression had softened slightly. "I believe you," he said. "But I need you to understand something too. Maya's been hurt before, by her mother leaving, by people who made promises they didn't keep. I can't let someone into her life who might disappear when things get complicated." "I won't disappear." The words came out stronger than Lottie had intended. "Marcus, these past few days have been the best of my life. Reading stories with Maya, walking the harbor, with you, that's more real than anything I've ever experienced." "But your family knows about us now. That phone call the other night, they're not happy about this, are they?" Lottie's silence was answer enough. "Right." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "So, what happens when they decide I'm bad for your image? What happens when photographers start showing up at Maya's school, or reporters start asking her teachers questions about her home life?" "That won't happen." "You can't promise that, Charlotte. You can't control how other people react to your choices." The use of her full name stung, but Lottie understood the distance it created. "You're right. I can't control everything, but I can control my own choices. And I choose you. Both of you." Marcus searched her face for a long moment. "What are you asking for?" "A chance to prove it. No more secrets. No more half-truths. You set whatever boundaries you need to protect Maya, and I'll respect them completely." "No photos?" "None. No statements to press about our relationship? Nothing. Maya's routine doesn't change. School pickup, bedtime, weekend activities. If you can't fit into our normal life, then this doesn't work." Lottie felt a flutter of hope. "I want to fit into your normal life. That's all I want." Marcus was quiet again, thinking. Finally, he extended his hand across the table. "Okay, we try this. But honestly this time." "Honestly this time," Lottie agreed, taking his hand. They left the cafe together, walking slowly toward the parking area as the sun began to set. The tension between them had eased, but Lottie could tell they were both being careful, testing the ground. "So," Marcus said as they reached his truck. "Tomorrow's Saturday. Maya and I usually hit the hardware store in the morning. Her bike wheel's been wobbling, and I promised to teach her basic maintenance." "That sounds—" Lottie paused, realizing she was about to say fun about a hardware store errand. 6 months ago, the idea would have seemed absurd. "Educational." Marcus's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You want to come? Fair warning, it involves actual tools and the possibility of getting your hands dirty." "I think I can handle it." The next morning, Lottie met them at Portland Hardware, a family-owned store that smelled like sawdust and metal polish. Maya bounced with excitement as Marcus loaded bike tools into a small basket. "Charlotte, Dad's going to teach us how to make my bike not wobbly anymore." "That's called truing the wheel," Marcus explained as they headed toward the repair area behind the store. "The spokes get loose over time, makes the wheel wobble when it spins." He set Maya's purple bike in a repair stand and spun the front wheel. Sure enough, it wobbled noticeably from side to side. "See how it moves?" Marcus pointed to the rim as it spun. "We need to tighten some spokes and loosen others until it spins straight." For the next hour, Marcus patiently taught both Maya and Lottie how to adjust spoke tension using a specialized wrench. Maya's attention span lasted about 15 minutes before she wandered off to pet the store cat. But Lottie found herself genuinely absorbed in the process. "Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey," Marcus reminded her as she worked on a stubborn spoke. "But remember, we're working from the backside here, so everything's reversed." Lottie's tongue poked out slightly as she concentrated, trying to feel the subtle resistance that meant the spoke was properly tensioned. When the wheel finally spun true, she felt a ridiculous surge of pride. "I fixed it," she announced, then immediately felt silly for sounding like Maya. But Marcus just grinned. "You did. Natural mechanical aptitude. My great-grandfather would be rolling in his grave if he knew his heiress was learning bike repair." "Why?" The question was simple, but it made Lottie pause. "Because Vale women don't do manual labor. We manage, we delegate, we write checks. We don't get our hands dirty." "Do you like getting your hands dirty?" Lottie looked down at her fingertips, now stained with bicycle grease despite Marcus's warnings about gloves. "Yeah, I really do." After they loaded Maya's bike back into Marcus's truck, they stopped at an art supply store. Maya had announced that her school was having a craft night next week, and she needed supplies for her underwater lighthouse city project. "She's been planning this for weeks," Marcus explained as Maya debated between purple and blue glitter. "Apparently, the octopus lighthouse keeper needs an entire neighborhood." Lottie found herself genuinely interested in Maya's artistic vision, helping her select various colors of construction paper and tiny plastic sea creatures to populate her creation. When they reached the checkout counter, she automatically started to pull out her credit card. "I've got it," Marcus said quietly. "Oh, I don't mind." "I've got it," he repeated, more firmly. Lottie understood. He was establishing boundaries, making sure she didn't accidentally slip into the role of wealthy benefactor. She respected that, even if it meant watching him count out exact change for $15 worth of art supplies, when she could have covered it without thinking. As they loaded the supplies into Maya's backpack, Lottie's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Lunch today? We need to discuss the Portland situation." "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her expression. "Family stuff. My mother wants to have lunch. Lottie hesitated, then decided on full honesty. Probably to talk about us. Marcus tensed slightly. What will you tell her? The truth, that I care about you and Maya, and I'm not going anywhere. That afternoon, Lottie sat across from her mother in the elegant dining room of Evelyn's townhouse. The contrast between this formal setting and the morning's hardware store adventure felt particularly sharp. You look different, Evelyn observed, cutting her salad with precise movements. Different how? Relaxed. Happy, I suppose? Evelyn's tone was carefully neutral. Graham tells me you've been spending time with a local electrician and his daughter. Marcus and Maya, yes. Lottie braced herself for the inevitable objections. Tell me about them. The request surprised Lottie. She'd expected warnings about image and propriety, not genuine curiosity. Marcus is good, really good. He works hard, loves his daughter completely, and treats people with respect regardless of who they are. Lottie's voice warmed as she spoke. And Maya is 6 years old and brilliant and funny. She's teaching me about lighthouses and underwater cities. You sound fond of her. I am, very fond. Lottie met her mother's eyes. They make me feel like myself, Mom. Not Charlotte Vale, the heiress, just me. Evelyn was quiet for several minutes, studying her daughter's face. Your father used to say the same thing about small towns, that people treated him like a person instead of a portfolio. Dad said that? Before the company got so big, before everything became about image and expansion. He loved those early days when he could just be David Vale, not the David Vale. Evelyn's expression softened. I haven't seen you this happy in years, Charlotte. Lottie felt tears prick her eyes. Really? Really, which is why I want to meet them. You, what? I'd like to meet this man and his daughter. Nothing formal, no drivers or photographers. Just tea, maybe, if you think they'd be comfortable with that. Lottie stared at her mother in shock. You're serious? Completely. If they're important to you, they're important to me. 2 days later, Marcus nervously adjusted his collar as he and Maya walked up the path to Evelyn's townhouse. Lottie had assured him that this would be casual, just tea and conversation, but he still felt underdressed in his clean jeans and button-down shirt. Remember what we talked about, he told Maya quietly. Use your inside voice, say please and thank you, and don't touch anything that looks expensive. I know, Dad. I'm not a baby. Maya tugged at her yellow dress, the one she wore to church and school programs. Is Charlotte's mom nice? I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. Evelyn answered the door herself, having given her housekeeper the afternoon off. She was elegant, but not intimidating, wearing a simple sweater and slacks instead of the formal attire Marcus had expected. You must be Maya, Evelyn said, crouching down to the little girl's eye level. Charlotte has told me so many wonderful things about you. Maya, suddenly shy, pressed against Marcus's leg. Thank you for having us to your house. Thank you for coming. I have cookies and milk in the kitchen, if that's all right with your father. The next hour passed more smoothly than Marcus had dared hope. Evelyn asked thoughtful questions about his work, Maya's school, their favorite activities together. She listened to Maya's explanation of underwater lighthouse cities with genuine interest, even offering suggestions about architectural details. Most importantly, she treated them like guests, not charity cases or curiosities. When Maya accidentally knocked over her milk glass, Evelyn just handed her paper towels and told her about the time Charlotte had spilled grape juice on a white sofa during a dinner party. She was about your age, Evelyn said conspiratorially, turned purple as the juice stain. Maya giggled, relaxing for the first time since they'd arrived. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn walked them to the door while Lottie helped Maya gather her drawings. I can see why Charlotte cares about you both, Evelyn told Marcus quietly. You're raising a remarkable little girl. Thank you, she's my world. And Charlotte? I haven't seen her this genuinely happy since she was Maya's age. Whatever you're doing, it's good for her. That evening, as Marcus tucked Maya into bed, she chattered excitedly about tea at Charlotte's mom's house. She has pictures of Charlotte when she was little everywhere, Maya reported. And she said I could come back and see her garden when the flowers bloom. Did you like her? Yeah, she's fancy but not scary fancy, and she said Charlotte talks about us all the time. Marcus smiled, kissing Maya's forehead. Sleep tight, baby girl. Dad, are you going to marry Charlotte? The question came out of nowhere, making Marcus nearly drop the lighthouse book he'd been reaching for. What makes you ask that? She looks at you the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in the movie. And she knows how to fix bike wheels now, which seems important for a stepmom. Marcus sat on the edge of Maya's bed, unsure how to answer. Charlotte and I are still getting to know each other, sweetheart. Marriage is a very big decision. But you like her. I like her very much. And she likes us. She does. Maya considered this seriously. Okay, but if you do marry her, can we still have our Saturday morning pancakes? Maya Grace Reed, if I ever get married again, Saturday morning pancakes will be written into the wedding vows. 3 weeks later, Lottie found herself sitting on the floor of Lincoln Elementary's multipurpose room, helping Maya glue glitter onto a cardboard seafloor. The school's family craft night was in full swing, with parents and children scattered around tables working on various art projects. More glitter, Maya announced, dumping another handful of blue sparkles onto her underwater scene. The Mir people need sparkly roads. Absolutely, Lottie agreed, carefully applying glue to tiny paper fish. She was wearing her oldest jeans and a sweater she didn't mind destroying, having learned from the bike repair incident that activities with Maya often involved collateral damage to clothing. Across the room, Marcus was helping a group of kids construct lighthouse towers from paper towel tubes. Several parents had approached him for advice about electrical issues at home, and he'd good-naturedly talked them through basic troubleshooting while supervising the construction project. Your boyfriend's popular, observed Jenny Morrison, whose son was in Maya's class. She was working on a solar system model that looked suspiciously professional. He's helpful, Lottie said simply. She'd learned to deflect personal questions without being rude, though she appreciated that most of the parents treated her like just another mom, despite not actually being one. Maya talks about you all the time, Jenny continued. Charlotte this, Charlotte that. She really adores you. Lottie felt a warm flutter in her chest. I adore her too. It shows. Not everyone can connect with kids the way you do. Jenny lowered her voice slightly, especially after what that family's been through. Lottie's attention sharpened. What do you mean? Oh. Jenny looked uncomfortable, realizing she might have overstepped. I just meant Maya's mom leaving when she was so little. It's been hard on both of them. Marcus has been very protective about who he brings around Maya. Before Lottie could respond, Maya bounced over with her completed project. Look, it's done! The underwater scene was a riot of glitter, construction paper sea creatures, and carefully positioned lighthouses. In the center, a purple octopus with a lighthouse hat presided over the chaos with benevolent tentacles. It's magnificent, Lottie said honestly. The best underwater lighthouse city I've ever seen. Can we hang it in our kitchen when we get home? Maya asked Marcus as he approached their table. Absolutely, right next to the refrigerator where everyone can admire it. As families began cleaning up and saying goodbyes, Lottie found herself reluctant to leave. The evening had been wonderfully normal, just parents and kids making art and sharing stories. No one had asked her about hotel development or board meetings. No one had taken her picture or treated her like a celebrity. Want to come over for a bit? Marcus asked as they loaded Maya's art supplies into his truck. Maya's been requesting blanket fort construction, and I could use an assistant architect. I've never built a blanket fort. Then you're in for a treat. An hour later, Lottie found herself crawling through an elaborate tunnel system Marcus and Maya had constructed in their living room, using dining room chairs, couch cushions, and every spare blanket in the house. Christmas lights strung from the ceiling gave the whole structure a magical glow. This is the main chamber, Maya explained, gesturing to the space under the coffee table. And this is the library. She pointed to a smaller alcove lined with picture books. And Dad made a kitchen area by the real kitchen so we can get snacks. The whole fort was ridiculous and wonderful, clearly the product of an engineer's mind applied to a 6-year-old's imagination. Lottie had never experienced anything like it. Grilled cheese? Marcus called from the actual kitchen. I figure fort food should be comfort food. Yes, please, Lottie called back, surprised by how hungry she was. They ate their sandwiches sitting cross-legged on pillows while Maya narrated the plot of a movie playing on Marcus's laptop. The animated film was something about a lost fish, but Lottie found herself more interested in the way Marcus absently stroked Maya's hair as she leaned against his shoulder. Halfway through the movie, Maya fell asleep between them, her head on Lottie's lap and her feet tangled with Marcus's. The blanket fort suddenly felt much smaller and more intimate. I should probably get her to bed, Marcus whispered. In a minute, Lottie whispered back. She looks so peaceful. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to Maya's steady breathing and the gentle hum of the Christmas lights. Lottie couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so content. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For this. For letting me be part of it. Lottie gestured around the fort. I've never felt more at home anywhere. Marcus studied her face in the colored lights. You mean that? I do. Something shifted in the air between them. Marcus carefully lifted the sleeping Maya and carried her to her bedroom, leaving Lottie alone in the fort with her thoughts. When he returned 10 minutes later, having gone through what sounded like an elaborate bedtime routine involving teeth brushing, story reading, and multiple requests for water, Lottie was in the kitchen, loading their dishes into the dishwasher. You don't have to do that. I want to. Lottie rinsed the last plate and turned to face him. Marcus, I need you to know something. These past few weeks, being with you and Maya, this is the happiest I've ever been. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Charlotte, I love you, she said quietly. I love both of you, and I know that's fast and maybe crazy, but it's true. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. It's not crazy. I love you too. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened as months of careful distance finally dissolved. Lottie melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he pressed her back against the kitchen counter. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. So what now? Lottie whispered. Now we figure out how to make this work. Really work. I want that, more than anything. Marcus kissed her again, soft and slow, full of promise. Then we'll make it work. But even as Lottie lost herself in his arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest tests were still ahead of them. The feeling proved prophetic 3 days later, when Marcus received a text asking him to meet Graham Vale for coffee at an upscale hotel lounge. The Harbor Grand Hotel's lounge was exactly the kind of place Marcus had expected Graham Vale to choose. Leather chairs, marble tables, and drinks that cost more than Marcus made in a day. He felt underdressed in his work clothes, but he'd come straight from a job site and hadn't wanted to go home to change. This meeting felt important enough to handle immediately. Graham was already seated at a corner table when Marcus arrived, wearing an expensive suit and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please sit down." Graham gestured to the chair across from him. "Can I order you something? Coffee? Something stronger?" "Coffee's fine." Marcus settled into the plush chair, hyper-aware of the contrast between this world and his own. A server appeared immediately, as if summoned by telepathy, and took their order. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," Graham began once they were alone again. "I wanted the chance to speak with you man-to-man about Charlotte." Marcus's shoulders tensed. "Okay. First, I want you to know that we've looked into your background. Routine due diligence, you understand? Single father, honorable discharge from the Navy, excellent work history, no criminal record. You're clearly a good man." The casual mention of a background check made Marcus's jaw clench, but he kept his expression neutral. "Thanks, I guess." Graham leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more confidential. "I also want you to know that Charlotte's happiness matters to us. We can see how much she cares about you and Maya. But we're also concerned about the practical realities of your situation." Graham reached into his briefcase and withdrew a leather folder. "You're a hard-working man supporting a young daughter on a single income? That can't be easy." Marcus's stomach began to knot. "We get by just fine." "I'm sure you do. But imagine what you could provide for Maya with a little additional security." Graham slid the folder across the table. "I'd like to propose something that could benefit everyone involved." Against his better judgment, Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a formal document outlining what appeared to be a grant program, something about community improvement projects and supporting local families. The dollar amounts mentioned made his eyes widen. "What is this?" "A family support grant, completely above board, no strings attached. It would cover Maya's college fund, home improvements, maybe a newer truck." Graham's smile was warm and seemingly genuine. "You could even expand your electrical business? Hire some help." Marcus read through the document more carefully, his unease growing with each paragraph. The language was formal and professional, but the underlying message was clear. Take the money and step away from Charlotte. "This is very generous," Marcus said carefully, closing the folder. "But I don't understand why you're offering it." "Because I think it would be best for everyone, including Charlotte, if your relationship remained private for now. Nothing permanent, you understand? Just until some business matters settle down. Public relationships can be complicated for people in Charlotte's position." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He set the folder on the table and leaned back in his chair, studying Graham's face. "You want me to take your money and disappear?" "I want you to be practical about the situation you're in." Graham's tone remained friendly, but there was steel underneath. "Charlotte lives in a different world than you do. Eventually, that's going to cause problems. For her, for you, for Maya. This way, everyone wins." Marcus stood up slowly, his hands steady despite the rage building in his chest. "Mr. Vale, I didn't ask for your money. I don't want your money, and I sure as hell don't need you to explain to me what's best for my daughter." "Marcus, please sit down. Let's discuss this rationally." "There's nothing to discuss." Marcus picked up the folder and set it firmly in front of Graham. "I care about Charlotte, and she cares about me. That's not for sale." Graham's friendly mask slipped slightly. "You're making a mistake. Charlotte's world comes with pressures you can't imagine. Media attention, public scrutiny, social expectations. Is that really what you want for Maya?" The mention of his daughter made Marcus pause. Graham pressed his advantage. "Think about Maya starting school, making friends. Think about how children can be when they discover her father is dating someone famous. Think about photographers following her to school, reporters asking her teachers questions. Every word was a knife to Marcus's greatest fear, that his choices might hurt Maya. But the way Graham was using that fear, manipulating it, made Marcus's resolve harden. Maya's my responsibility, not yours. And Charlotte's choices are hers to make. Marcus turned to leave, but Graham's voice stopped him. If you really care about them both, you'll consider what's best for their futures. Charlotte has obligations, expectations. Eventually, she'll have to choose between her family's legacy and this relationship. Why put her in that position? Marcus looked back over his shoulder. Because maybe it's time someone chose her instead of her money for once. He walked out of the hotel without looking back, leaving Graham alone with his untouched coffee and his rejected folder. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat on his front porch steps, staring at his phone. He'd driven home on autopilot, his mind racing through Graham's words and their implications. The older man had been polite, even friendly, but the underlying threat was clear. Charlotte's family would never accept him, and continuing this relationship would only hurt everyone involved. Maybe Graham was right. Maybe Marcus was being selfish, thinking he could bridge the gap between their worlds. Charlotte deserved someone who could match her education, her sophistication, her wealth. Someone who wouldn't embarrass her at business dinners or charity galas. And Maya deserved a stable life without cameras and gossip and the complications that came with dating a public figure. His phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. Maya's art show is tonight. Still planning to meet us there at 6? Marcus stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Something came up. Can we talk later? Everything okay? Fine, just busy with work. It was a lie, but Marcus needed time to think. Time to figure out how to protect the two people he loved most without destroying them all in the process. 2 hours later, Charlotte stood outside Lincoln Elementary's multipurpose room, checking her phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Marcus hadn't responded to any of her texts since their brief exchange earlier, and Maya kept asking where he was. Maybe he's stuck at work, Lottie suggested, though her stomach was twisted with worry. It wasn't like Marcus to miss something important to Maya without explanation. Inside, Maya's underwater lighthouse city was displayed prominently on a table near the front of the room. Other families admired the elaborate construction while Maya stood beside it, clearly proud, but also clearly disappointed that her father wasn't there to see it. He'll be here, Maya said with 6-year-old certainty when Mrs. Rodriguez asked about Marcus. Dad doesn't miss my art shows. But as the evening wore on and still no Marcus appeared, Maya's confidence began to waver. Lottie did her best to take pictures and ask enthusiastic questions about the artistic process, but she could see Maya scanning the door hopefully every few minutes. Where is he? Maya whispered to Lottie as they packed up the artwork to take home. I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm sure he has a good reason. They drove to Marcus's house in Lottie's car. She'd taken an Uber to the school, hoping to ride home with Marcus and Maya. The house was dark when they pulled into the driveway, Marcus's truck nowhere to be seen. Maybe he's still working, Maya said, but her voice was small and uncertain. Lottie helped Maya unlock the front door with the key she kept on her backpack. They turned on lights and settled Maya's art project on the kitchen counter, but the house felt empty and wrong without Marcus's presence. Should I call him? Maya asked. Before Lottie could answer, headlights swept across the front windows. Marcus's truck pulled into the driveway, and Maya ran to the front door. Dad, you missed my art show! Marcus climbed out of his truck slowly, his expression weary. I'm sorry, baby girl. Work ran late. But you always come to my art shows. Always. I know. I'm sorry. Marcus's voice was flat in a way that made Lottie's chest tighten with alarm. When he looked at her, His eyes were distant and careful. "Hi, Charlotte." "Hi." Lottie studied his face, searching for clues about what had changed. "Is everything okay?" "Fine. Just a long day." But it wasn't fine. Lottie could see it in the way Marcus avoided her eyes, in the careful distance he maintained as they all moved into the kitchen. Something had happened. Maya chattered about her art project and the other families who had admired her work, but Marcus's responses were distracted. When Maya asked if they could build another blanket fort tomorrow night, he made non-committal sounds that clearly disappointed her. "I should probably get going," Lottie said finally, unable to stand the strange tension any longer. "Let you two get ready for bed." "Yeah, probably best." Marcus agreed too quickly. Maya protested the early end to the evening, but Marcus was firm about bedtime routines. As he carried Maya upstairs for her bath, Lottie gathered her purse and jacket, confusion and hurt warring in her chest. Marcus returned 20 minutes later to find her waiting by the front door. "What happened today?" she asked quietly. "And don't say work ran late. You've never missed one of Maya's events for work." Marcus ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "Charlotte, we need to talk." The words sent ice through Lottie's veins. "Okay." "Not here. Not with Maya upstairs." Marcus grabbed his jacket. "Let's walk." They walked through Marcus's neighborhood in tense silence, past modest houses with well-tended yards and front porches where families had gathered for the evening. The normalcy of it all felt surreal, given the growing dread in Lottie's stomach. Finally, Marcus stopped under a streetlight near a small park. "I met with your uncle today," he said without preamble. Lottie's blood went cold. "What?" "He asked me to have coffee. Said he wanted to talk man to man about our relationship." "Oh God. Marcus, what did he say?" "He offered me money, Charlotte. A lot of money. Called it a family support grant, but we both knew what it really was." Lottie felt sick. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was going to do that." "I know you didn't." Marcus's voice was tired. "But it made me realize something. Your family is never going to accept this? Accept me. I don't care what they accept. I care about what I want, and I want you." "But for how long?" Marcus turned to face her fully. "How long before the pressure gets to be too much? How long before you get tired of defending your relationship to everyone who matters in your world?" "That's not going to happen." "Isn't it?" "Charlotte, be honest. Can you really see yourself bringing me to charity galas and board meetings? Can you picture introducing me to your business associates as your electrician boyfriend?" The words stung because they touched on fears Lottie had tried not to acknowledge. But looking at Marcus's face under the streetlight, proud and hurt and trying to protect himself, she felt something crystallize inside her. "Yes," she said firmly. "I can picture exactly that. And if anyone has a problem with it, that's their problem, not ours." Marcus shook his head. "You say that now. But what about when photographers start following Maya to school? What about when business deals fall through because people don't like your personal choices? What about when Maya gets older and understands that dating me cost you opportunities?" "Marcus, I can't be the reason you give up your life, Charlotte. And I can't let Maya get caught in the crossfire when this gets complicated." The finality in his voice made Lottie's throat close with panic. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe Graham was right. Maybe we're from different worlds for a reason." Lottie felt tears threatening, but she forced them back. "So you're just giving up? Just like that?" "I'm protecting my daughter. That's what fathers do." "And what about protecting us? What about protecting what we have?" Marcus's composure finally cracked slightly. "What we have isn't worth anything if it hurts Maya." The words hit Lottie like a slap. She understood his priority. Of course, Maya came first. But the implication that their relationship was disposable cut deep. I see. Lottie's voice came out steadier than she felt. So that's it? Graham waves some money around and makes a few threats and you just fold? It's not that simple. It is that simple. Either you believe in us or you don't. Either you think I'm worth fighting for or you don't. Marcus's jaw worked as he struggled with words. Charlotte, save it. Lottie turned and started walking back toward his house. I'll call an Uber from your place. Tell Maya I said goodnight. Charlotte, wait. But she didn't wait. She couldn't stand there and listen to him explain why she wasn't worth the risk, why his fears mattered more than her feelings, why Graham's manipulation had been more persuasive than her love. The Uber ride back to her apartment was a blur of streetlights and held back tears. It wasn't until she was safely behind her own door that Lottie finally let herself cry, for Marcus's wounded pride, for Maya's confusion, for the family life she'd glimpsed and lost so quickly. But underneath the heartbreak, anger was building. Anger at Graham for his manipulative interference. Anger at Marcus for believing the worst instead of fighting for the best. And anger at herself for being naive enough to think love could bridge any gap. The anger sustained her through the next 24 hours of radio silence from Marcus. She canceled meetings, ignored calls from Graham, and sat in her apartment trying to figure out what to do next. The answer came in an unexpected phone call from her mother. Charlotte, I just had the most interesting conversation with your uncle. About what? About his meeting with Marcus yesterday. Graham seems to think he handled a delicate situation very well. Evelyn's tone was carefully neutral, but Lottie could hear the disapproval underneath. Did he tell you about the bribe? He mentioned a family support initiative. I told him I thought that was presumptuous. Lottie sat up straighter. You did? Charlotte, I may be old-fashioned, but I'm not blind. I saw how you looked at that man and his daughter. I saw how they looked at you. Whatever Graham thinks he's protecting, it isn't your happiness. It doesn't matter now. Marcus ended things. Because he thinks we'll never accept him. Because Graham made him feel like he wasn't good enough. Evelyn's voice sharpened. That stops now. Before Lottie could ask what she meant, the line went dead. An hour later, Graham Vale sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant announced that Evelyn was here to see him. Send her in, Graham said, assuming this was about the Portland Development Project. Evelyn walked into his office with the bearing of a woman who had spent 30 years managing charity boards and social climbers. When she closed the door behind her with deliberate care, Graham realized this wasn't about business. We need to discuss your conversation with Marcus Reed, she said without preamble. Graham's shoulders tensed. Evelyn, I was protecting Charlotte's interests. Were you? Or were you protecting your own comfort zone? I don't know what you mean. Evelyn sat down across from his desk, her posture perfect and her expression steely. I mean that you're so concerned with what people will think about Charlotte dating a working man that you forgot to consider what makes her happy. This isn't about happiness, it's about practicality. Charlotte has responsibilities. To whom? To you? To the company? Or to herself? Graham leaned back in his chair, recognizing the tone that had once intimidated him when they were children, and Evelyn was deciding whether to tell their parents about his misbehavior. Charlotte is a Vale. That comes with certain expectations. Charlotte is a 28-year-old woman who deserves to choose her own path. And Marcus Reed is a good man who was made to feel ashamed of honest work and genuine love. I never said there was anything wrong with honest work. You didn't have to say it, Graham. You offered him money to disappear. What message does that send? Graham was quiet for several moments, staring out his office window at the Portland harbor. I was trying to prevent problems before they started. The only problem here is your inability to see past your own prejudices. Evelyn stood up, smoothing her skirt. You're going to fix this? How? By apologizing to Marcus Reed, by admitting that you were wrong to interfere, and by making it clear that Charlotte has our family's support in whatever choice she makes. And if I refuse? Evelyn's smile was sharp and elegant. Then I'll call an emergency board meeting and we can discuss whether your judgment is still sound enough to run this company. Graham stared at his sister-in-law, recognizing the iron will that had helped build Vale Hotels into what it was today. You're serious? Completely. After Evelyn left, Graham sat alone in his office for a long time, thinking about family and legacy and the difference between protecting someone and controlling them. Finally, he picked up his phone and scrolled to Marcus's number. Meanwhile, 2 miles away, Lottie stood on Marcus's front porch in the gathering dusk, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd driven here directly from her mother's phone call, needing to see Marcus face to face, needing to try one more time. Marcus opened the door wearing old jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. When he saw her, his expression cycled through surprise, longing, and resignation. Charlotte, we need to talk. I think we said everything last night. No, we didn't. We said what we thought we were supposed to say. We said what we were afraid to say. But we didn't say what we meant. Marcus glanced back into the house, where the sound of cartoons drifted from the living room. Maya's watching TV. Can we... Lottie gestured toward the porch chairs. Please. Marcus stepped outside, closing the door behind him. They sat in the chairs where they'd shared coffee and conversation just weeks ago, though it felt like a lifetime. My mother talked to Graham today, Lottie began. She told him he was out of line. Your mother? Apparently, she was more observant during our tea than I realized. She saw how we are together, how Maya and I are together. She knows this is real. Marcus's expression softened slightly, but he didn't respond. I also realized something, Lottie continued. You were right about one thing. I do have to choose. Marcus's shoulders slumped as if he'd been expecting this. I have to choose between being Charlotte Vale, Hotel Heiress, and being the woman who loves you and Maya. Lottie leaned forward in her chair. So I choose you, both of you, always. Charlotte, I'm not finished. Her voice was steady but fierce. You said I can't picture introducing you as my electrician boyfriend. You're right, I can't. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, but Lottie kept talking. Because you're not just my electrician boyfriend. You're the man who moved airplane seats to keep me comfortable. You're the father who reads lighthouse stories and builds blanket forts and teaches bike repair with patience. You're the person who makes me feel like I matter for who I am, not what I own. Marcus stared at her, hope and fear warring in his expression. You think I'll get tired of defending our relationship? I've been defending my right to exist as more than a business asset my whole life. Fighting for us feels like the first battle actually worth winning. And when business deals fall through, when people judge you for your choices, then I'll make new deals with better people. Marcus, I have enough money for 10 lifetimes. What I don't have enough of is love, laughter, bedtime stories, and Saturday morning pancakes. That's what you and Maya give me. Marcus ran his hands over his face, struggling with emotions Lottie could see him trying to contain. You don't understand what you're asking for. The scrutiny, the pressure. No, you don't understand what you're giving up. Lottie stood up, pacing to the porch railing. I'm not some society princess who's slumming it for fun. This is my life. You and Maya, are my life. And if you walk away because you're scared of what other people might think or do, then you're not the man I thought you were." The words hung between them in the cooling evening air. Marcus was quiet for so long that Lottie began to think she'd lost. Then Maya's voice drifted through the screen door. "Dad? Is Charlotte here?" I heard her voice. "Yeah, baby girl. She's here. Can she come in? I want to show her the picture I drew of our family." The word family hit both adults like lightning. Marcus met Lottie's eyes across the porch, and something in his expression finally cracked open. "What kind of picture?" he called back. "You and me and Charlotte at the lighthouse, with the octopus." Marcus laughed despite himself, a short, emotional sound. "Give us one more minute, Maya." "Okay, but hurry up. I want to show her before bedtime." Marcus stood up slowly, moving to stand beside Lottie at the porch railing. The harbor stretched out before them, dotted with lights from boats heading home for the night. "She drew us as a family," he said quietly. "Yeah, she did. And you really want that, even with all the complications?" Lottie turned to face him fully. "Marcus, complications are just problems that haven't been solved yet. We can solve problems. What we can't solve is loving each other and pretending we don't." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. "I was scared. Scared that loving you would hurt Maya. Scared that I wasn't enough for your world. You're more than enough. You're everything." This time when Marcus kissed her, it wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and claiming and full of weeks' worth of suppressed emotion. Lottie melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he backed her against the porch railing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "So what now?" "Now we figure it out together. No more running away when things get hard." "No more running away," Marcus agreed. "But I need you to understand, Maya comes first. Always. I wouldn't want it any other way. She's part of you, which means she's part of us." "Dad!" Maya's voice was getting impatient. "Are you done talking yet?" "Yeah, we're done talking." Marcus grinned at Lottie. "Want to see our family portrait?" Maya's drawing was exactly what she'd described. 3 stick figures standing in front of a purple lighthouse, while a smiling octopus waved from the water. The figures were holding hands, and Maya had carefully labeled each one. "Dad, me, and Charlotte. It's perfect," Lottie said, her throat tight with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." "Can we hang it on the refrigerator?" Maya asked. "Definitely." As Marcus attached the drawing to the refrigerator with lighthouse magnets, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, then showed the screen to Lottie. The message was from Graham. "Would you be available to meet tomorrow afternoon? I owe you an apology." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Your mother works fast." The Vale women are a force of nature. The next afternoon, Marcus met Graham at a different location, a small coffee shop near the harbor that Graham had clearly chosen to be less intimidating than their previous venue. When Marcus arrived, Graham was already seated at a corner table, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Thank you for coming," Graham said as Marcus sat down. "I wasn't sure you would. Charlotte said you wanted to apologize." "I do." Graham leaned forward, his expression serious. "What I did yesterday was wrong. I let my concerns about public perception cloud my judgment about what's best for Charlotte." Marcus waited, sensing there was more. "I also made assumptions about your character and motivations that were unfair and insulting. You're clearly a good man who cares about my niece and your daughter. I had no right to treat you otherwise." The apology was formal, but seemed genuine. Marcus nodded slowly. "I appreciate that." I also want you to know that Charlotte has our family's complete support. Whatever relationship you two choose to build, we'll respect and defend." Marcus studied Graham's face, looking for signs of insincerity. "What changed your mind?" Graham's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Evelyn reminded me that our job is to support Charlotte's happiness, not control it. She also reminded me that Vale Hotels was built by my father-in-law, who started as a carpenter's son with big dreams and a good work ethic." "Sounds like a wise woman." "She is, and she sees something in your relationship with Charlotte that impressed her. Evelyn doesn't impress easily." They talked for another 20 minutes, not quite comfortably, but without the underlying tension of their previous meeting. As they prepared to leave, Graham extended his hand. "I hope we can start over." Marcus shook the offered hand. "For Charlotte's sake, I hope so too." 2 days later, on Saturday morning, Charlotte walked into the Portland Public Library, carrying a canvas bag full of picture books. She'd volunteered to help with story time, a decision that would have horrified her 6 months ago, but felt completely natural now. Marcus and Maya were already there, sitting cross-legged on the colorful carpet with other families. Maya waved excitedly when she spotted Charlotte patting the empty space beside her. "I saved you a spot." As Charlotte settled between Maya and Marcus, she felt the curious glances of other parents. A few people clearly recognized her, but their expressions seemed more curious than hostile. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus murmured. "Being out in public like this?" "I'm sure." Charlotte squeezed his hand. "I want people to see us together. I want Maya to see that I'm not hiding or ashamed." The storytime volunteer began reading a tale about a lighthouse keeper who learned that sharing his light made it brighter, not dimmer. Maya listened with rapt attention, occasionally leaning against Charlotte's shoulder or whispering commentary about the illustrations. After the stories, they walked to the farmers' market that set up in Monument Square every Saturday. Maya skipped between them, clutching Charlotte's hand on one side and Marcus's on the other, clearly delighted to have both her favorite adults together. The market was busy with Saturday morning shoppers, and Charlotte braced herself for stares and whispers. There were a few curious glances, and she caught someone discreetly taking a photo with their phone, but most people seemed more interested in the fresh produce and homemade pastries. At a flower stall run by an elderly couple, Maya convinced them to buy sunflowers because they look happy. As Marcus paid for the bright yellow blooms, Charlotte noticed a familiar figure approaching. Graham walked toward them with measured steps, his expression carefully neutral. Several shoppers recognized him and stepped aside respectfully. "Uncle Graham." Charlotte's voice was cautious, but not unfriendly. "Charlotte, Marcus, Maya." Graham nodded to each of them in turn. "Beautiful morning for the market." "Yes, it is." Marcus's posture was alert but relaxed. "Maya, I believe congratulations are in order. I heard your underwater lighthouse city won first place in the school art show." Maya beamed at the recognition. "Thank you. Do you want to see the picture I drew of our family?" Before Graham could respond, Maya had pulled out a folded piece of paper from her small backpack. It was a new drawing, the same 3 stick figures, but this time they were standing in front of what looked like the farmer's market, surrounded by flowers and smiling vendors. Graham studied the drawings seriously. "This is very good. You have real artistic talent." "Charlotte helped me with the flower colors. She knows which ones look best together." "Does she?" Graham glanced at Charlotte with what might have been approval. "That's a useful skill." As they prepared to part ways, Graham extended his hand to Marcus. "I hope to see you all at the Vale family barbecue next month. It's an annual tradition. Very casual, just family and close friends." The invitation was clearly deliberate, a public statement of acceptance that wouldn't be lost on the other market-goers who were watching with interest. "We'd like that," Marcus replied, shaking Graham's hand. After Graham left, they continued through the market, stopping to buy fresh bread and local honey. Several vendors greeted Marcus by name, and a few recognized Charlotte but treated her like any other customer. The normalcy of it felt revolutionary. "That went well," Charlotte observed as they loaded their purchases into Marcus's truck. "Better than expected," Marcus agreed. "Your uncle's trying." "We all are." As they drove through Portland toward Marcus's house for their usual Saturday lunch, Maya chattered about her plans for the afternoon, something involving teaching Charlotte how to skip stones at the beach. "Can we do this every Saturday?" Maya asked as they pulled into the driveway. "If Charlotte wants to," Marcus said, glancing at her with a smile that made her heart flip. "I want to," Charlotte said firmly. "Every Saturday, for as long as you'll have me." "Forever?" Maya asked hopefully. Marcus and Charlotte exchanged a look full of love and promise and shared dreams. "Yeah, baby girl," Marcus said softly. "Forever sounds about right." 2 months later, Charlotte stood at the departure gate at Portland International, watching Maya bounce with excitement in her small purple suitcase and backpack covered in travel stickers. "Are you sure we have everything?" Marcus asked, reviewing their carry-on bags one more time. "Snacks, books, tablet, charging cables? We have everything," Charlotte assured him, amused by his first time flying with girlfriend nerves. "It's just Boston for the weekend. If we forget something, we can buy it there." They were flying to visit Charlotte's college roommate, who'd invited them all to her daughter's birthday party. It was their first trip together as a family, a word they'd all started using naturally, without discussion or formal declaration. The past 2 months had been a careful dance of integration and boundary setting. Charlotte had learned Maya's schedule and preferences, her fears and favorite things. She'd attended school events and play dates, helped with homework and bedtime stories, and gradually become a fixture in their daily life. Marcus had met more of Charlotte's world. Dinner with Evelyn, lunch with a few board members, a charity gala where Charlotte had introduced him proudly as "my boyfriend Marcus and his daughter Maya." The reactions had been mixed, but Charlotte's confidence had never wavered. The press attention had been minimal and mostly positive. A few photos from the farmer's market, a brief mention in a society column about Charlotte's refreshingly normal romance. Tasha had started a scrapbook of clippings, claiming Maya would want to see them someday. Flight 447 to Boston, now boarding all passengers. Maya grabbed both their hands as they walked toward the gate. "This is the same plane we took before, right, Dad?" "Same route, probably different plane," Marcus explained. "But maybe the same seats where Charlotte fell asleep on your shoulder?" They weren't in the same seats. These were 3 together in row 15, but Maya seemed determined to recreate the magic of her parents' meet-cute story. As the plane lifted off, Charlotte looked out the window at the Maine coast, spreading below them, then at Marcus helping Maya identify landmarks from above, then at the small engagement ring that had appeared on her finger just last week after a sunset proposal on their beloved harbor walk. "Are you happy?" Maya asked suddenly, settling back in her seat between them. Charlotte took Marcus's hand across Maya's lap, feeling the steady warmth of his palm against hers. "Happier than I knew was possible," she said honestly. "Good, because we're going to be a family for a really long time." "The longest time," Marcus agreed, lifting Maya's hand to kiss her knuckles, then doing the same with Charlotte's. As the plane climbed toward cruising altitude, Charlotte closed her eyes and let herself doze against Marcus's shoulder. Just like that first morning that had changed everything. But this time, when she woke up, she wasn't waking up to uncertainty and careful distance. This time, she was waking up to home. Through the small airplane window, lighthouses dotted the coast below. their steady beams guiding travelers safely through whatever storms might come. Charlotte squeezed Marcus's hand and smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A family bound not by obligation or expectation, but by the kind of love that keeps the light burning bright, no matter how dark the night might get. Maya stirred between them, still clutching the small lighthouse book she never traveled without, and mumbled sleepily, "Are we there yet?" "Almost, baby girl," Marcus whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Almost home." But Charlotte knew they were already there.